For 3 months, I've been finding small chalk hearts drawn on my front steps every morning. Perfect little hearts in different colors: pink, blue, yellow, purple. At first, I thought it was just neighborhood kids being playful, so I'd wash them off and go about my day. But when I finally caught the kid doing it, my neighbor's 6-year-old son Tommy, and asked him why, his answer stopped me cold. My mommy in heaven taught me that hearts make sad people happy. Tommy's mother had died in a car accident 8 months ago, but here's what I didn't know. She had been leaving those same chalk hearts on my steps for 2 years before she died. And the reason why will break your heart and change how you see the small acts of kindness that happen around us every single day. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm about to tell you a story that will make you pay attention to every small gesture of kindness in your life, because you never know who might be watching, learning, and carrying on a legacy of love you didn't even know existed. This isn't just about a little boy drawing chalk hearts. It's about how grief can transform into grace, how children see things adults miss, and how sometimes the people we think we barely know are actually the ones holding us together. By the end of this story, you'll understand that every act of kindness creates ripples we can't see. And sometimes those ripples come back to us exactly when we need them most. To understand why Tommy's words hit me so hard, you need to know about the darkest period of my life. 2 years ago, my husband David was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We went from planning our 25th anniversary to planning his funeral in the span of 6 months. David died on a cold Tuesday morning in February, and I felt like my world had ended with him. The months after David's death were a blur of grief, paperwork, and the crushing loneliness of a house that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. I stopped cooking real meals, stopped answering the phone, stopped caring about anything beyond just getting through each day. I became what people politely call a recluse. I worked from home as a freelance editor, so I rarely had to leave the house. Groceries were delivered, bills were paid online. I could go weeks without having a real conversation with another human being. My neighbors, the Hendersons next door, had tried to reach out after David's funeral. Lisa Henderson had brought casseroles, her husband Mike had offered to help with yard work, and their little boy Tommy had drawn me a picture of a rainbow that I'd politely accepted and then forgotten about. But I wasn't ready for kindness. I wasn't ready for community. I just wanted to be left alone with my grief. The first chalk heart appeared on a Monday morning in March, about a year after David died. I almost stepped on it when I went out to get the mail. A small pink heart drawn right in the center of my top step. I stared at it for a moment, wondering who had done it and why. It was clearly drawn by a child. The lines were wobbly and the proportions weren't perfect, but there was something sweet about it, something innocent and hopeful. I washed it off with the hose and didn't think much more about it. But the next morning, there was another one. This time it was blue, drawn in the same spot on my top step. The day after that, yellow, then purple, then pink again. Every single morning for weeks, I would find a new chalk heart on my step, always in the same spot, always small and simple, always in a different color. I started looking forward to them, though I wouldn't have admitted it at the time. It became part of my morning routine. Open the door, look down, see what color heart was waiting for me. It was like having a tiny anonymous friend who was thinking about me. I became curious about who was leaving them. I tried staying up late to catch the artist in action, but I never saw anyone. I tried getting up extra early, but the hearts were always already there by the time I checked. Whoever was doing this was either very sneaky or very dedicated to their schedule. I asked the mail carrier if he'd seen anyone drawing on my steps. I casually mentioned it to the grocery delivery person, but no one had seen anything. The hearts just appeared like magic every single morning. As the weeks turned into months, I realized something had changed in my daily routine. I was getting up earlier, eager to see what color heart would be waiting for me. I was opening my front door more often, sometimes just to look at the heart and smile. Those simple chalk drawings were the first things that had made me smile since David died. I stopped washing them off immediately. Instead, I leave them there for most of the day, only cleaning them off in the evening so there would be a fresh canvas for the next morning's heart. I started taking pictures of them with my phone. I told myself it was just curiosity, but really, I was creating a collection of these small daily gifts. One morning in June, it had rained heavily the night before. When I opened my door, I expected to find my step clean and heart-free, but there it was, a bright yellow heart, drawn in what looked like sidewalk chalk that had been mixed with water to make it more permanent. Someone had gone to extra effort to make sure I had my heart, even on a rainy day. That's when I realized these weren't just random acts of childhood whimsy. Someone was deliberately, consistently, thoughtfully leaving these hearts for me. Someone who cared enough to adapt their method when the weather didn't cooperate. In August, everything changed. I was working in my home office when I heard sirens in the neighborhood, lots of them, police cars, ambulances, fire trucks. I looked out my window and saw them all gathered at the Henderson house next door. Later that evening, Mike Henderson knocked on my door. His eyes were red from crying and he could barely speak. "Sarah, I wanted to let you know, Lisa was in a car accident this afternoon. She didn't make it. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach." Lisa Henderson had been nothing but kind to me, even when I'd been too wrapped up in my own grief to be a good neighbor back. She was only 34 years old, with a 6-year-old son who now had to grow up without his mother. The morning after Lisa's accident, there was no chalk heart on my step. For the first time in months, I opened my door to find just plain concrete. I told myself it made sense. The neighborhood was in shock. Everyone was focused on the Henderson family's tragedy. Whoever had been leaving the hearts probably had more important things to worry about. But I missed it more than I expected. That little splash of color and hope had become such an important part of my day. Lisa's funeral was on a Thursday. I debated whether to go. I hadn't been to a funeral since David's, and I wasn't sure I could handle it emotionally. But Lisa had been my neighbor for 5 years, and she'd tried so hard to be kind to me during my darkest time. I put on my black dress and walked next door. The service was beautiful and heartbreaking. Lisa had been loved by so many people, friends from work, parents from Tommy's school, neighbors from throughout the community. Person after person stood up to talk about her kindness, her generosity, her infectious laugh. Tommy sat in the front row between his father and his grandmother, looking so small and lost in his little black suit. After the service, people gathered at the Henderson house for a reception. I almost didn't go, but something made me walk over with a casserole I'd hastily put together. Mike Henderson looked exhausted but grateful. "Sarah, thank you for coming. Lisa always said you were going through such a hard time and she worried about you." "She worried about me?" "Oh, yes. She talked about you all the time. She said you seemed so sad and lonely, and she wished she could find a way to help." I felt a strange chill. "What do you mean?" Mike looked confused by my question. "I mean, she was always trying to think of ways to cheer you up. Little things, you know? She didn't want to be pushy, but she cared about you." As I was leaving the reception, Tommy's grandmother, Mrs. Patterson, stopped me. "You're Sarah from next door, aren't you?" "Yes, ma'am. Lisa talked about you so much. She said you were having such a hard time after your husband passed, and she was always trying to think of ways to brighten your day without being intrusive." Mrs. Patterson smiled sadly. She had such a big heart, always thinking about other people, always trying to spread a little joy wherever she could. The word heart hit me like a lightning bolt. I stared at Mrs. Patterson, my mind racing. Mrs. Patterson, did Lisa ever, did she ever mention anything about chalk or drawing? I walked home in a daze, my mind putting together pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even known existed. Lisa Henderson had been leaving the chalk hearts on my steps for months while I was drowning in grief and isolation. My neighbor had been quietly, anonymously, trying to bring a little color and hope into my days. She'd never said anything about it, never expected thanks or recognition. She'd just seen someone who was hurting and had found a simple, gentle way to try to help. And I'd never even known it was her. That night, I sat in my kitchen and cried harder than I had since David's funeral. But these weren't just tears of grief. They were tears of guilt, gratitude, and overwhelming regret. Lisa Henderson had been trying to take care of me, and I'd been too wrapped up in my own pain to even notice. She'd been reaching out in the most beautiful, unobtrusive way possible, and I'd never acknowledged it, never thanked her, never even realized what a gift she was giving me. Now she was gone, and I'd never get the chance to tell her how much those little chalk hearts had meant to me. 3 weeks after Lisa's funeral, I opened my door to find a small pink heart on my step. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I wondered if I was imagining it. But no, there it was, wobbly and imperfect, and absolutely beautiful. The next morning, there was a blue one, then yellow, then purple. Someone was continuing Lisa's tradition. I had to know who it was. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. and positioned myself at my front window with a cup of coffee, determined to solve the mystery. At 6:30 a.m., I saw a small figure creep across the yard from the Henderson house. It was Tommy, still in his pajamas, carrying a piece of sidewalk chalk. I watched as he carefully drew a small green heart on my step, stood back to admire his work, and then tiptoed back to his house. My heart broke and soared at the same time. The next morning, I was waiting on my porch when Tommy arrived with his chalk. He froze when he saw me, like a deer caught in headlights. "Hi, Tommy," I said gently. "I've been wondering who's been leaving these beautiful hearts for me." He looked down at his feet, clutching the chalk. "Am I in trouble?" "Oh, sweetheart, no, you're not in trouble at all. I love the hearts. They make me very happy." Tommy looked up at me with his mother's eyes. "Really? Really? But I'm curious, why do you draw them for me?" That's when he said the words that changed everything. "My mommy in heaven taught me that hearts make sad people happy." I knelt down to Tommy's level. "Your mommy taught you that?" He nodded solemnly. "She said you were very sad because your husband went to heaven, just like she was going to heaven. She said sometimes when people are sad, they forget that people love them, so she drew hearts to remind you." I felt tears starting to form. "She told you she was drawing hearts for me?" "Uh-huh. Every morning before school, she would draw you a heart. She said it was our secret project to help you feel better." Tommy looked down at the chalk in his hand. "After Mommy went to heaven, I wanted to keep doing it for her. Daddy said it was okay as long as I was careful crossing the yard." Over the next few minutes, Tommy told me the whole story. Lisa had noticed how sad I looked whenever she saw me outside. She'd wanted to help, but didn't want to intrude on my grief. So she'd started the chalk hearts as a way to send me a little love and encouragement every day, without putting any pressure on me to respond or interact. She'd involved Tommy in the project, teaching him that small acts of kindness could make a big difference in someone's life. She told them that even when people seem like they want to be alone, they still need to know that someone cares about them. Mommy said the hearts were like hugs for people who might not want real hugs yet, Tommy explained. I sat down on my step next to Tommy, not caring that I was still in my pajamas and robe. Tommy, do you know how much those hearts have meant to me? He shook his head. They've been the best part of my day for months. Every morning, I would open my door and see a heart, and it would make me smile. Your mommy was right. They did make me feel better. Tommy's face lit up. Really? They made you happy? They made me very happy. And now that I know you're continuing your mommy's project, they make me even happier. From that morning on, Tommy and I had a new routine. He would still draw the hearts, but now I would come outside to watch him do it. We'd talk about colors, about shapes, about his mom, about my husband. Tommy told me stories about Lisa that I'd never heard. How she would sing while she cooked breakfast, how she would read him 3 books every night before bed, how she would dance in the kitchen when her favorite songs came on the radio. In return, I told Tommy stories about David, how he would leave me little notes in my lunch, how he would always let me pick the movie on Friday nights, how he would sing off key in the shower and make me laugh. Slowly, something began to change in both of us. Tommy was processing his grief by talking about his mother and continuing her legacy of kindness. I was processing mine by sharing memories of David and learning to connect with another person again. The chalk hearts became the foundation of an unlikely friendship between a grieving 6-year-old and a grieving 50-year-old. One morning, Tommy arrived with a whole box of sidewalk chalk. "Mrs. Sarah, I had an idea. What if we drew hearts for other people too?" "What do you mean?" "Well, Mrs. Johnson down the street looks sad sometimes, and Mr. Garcia next to her always looks tired. Maybe they need hearts too." I looked at this wise little boy who had learned from his mother that kindness should be shared, not hoarded. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Tommy." That's how the Heart Brigade was born. Every morning, Tommy and I would walk through the neighborhood with our chalk, leaving small hearts on the steps of people who looked like they might need a little extra love. We drew hearts for Mrs. Johnson, who was caring for her husband with dementia. We drew hearts for Mr. Garcia, who worked 2 jobs to support his family. We drew hearts for the new family who had just moved in and didn't know anyone yet. We never signed our names or left notes. We just left the hearts and moved on, trusting that these small gestures would brighten someone's day the way they had brightened mine. Within a few weeks, something magical started happening. Other people in the neighborhood began leaving their own chalk drawings. Flowers appeared next to our hearts. Smiley faces showed up on sidewalks. Encouraging words were written in colorful chalk on driveways. The whole neighborhood was becoming more connected, more caring, more aware of each other's needs. Mrs. Johnson started leaving cookies on people's porches. Mr. Garcia began offering to help neighbors with yard work. The new family organized a block party to meet everyone. Tommy's simple act of continuing his mother's tradition had created a wave of kindness that was transforming our entire community. One morning, we found a note tucked under my door. It was from Mrs. Johnson. "To whoever has been leaving the beautiful chalk hearts on my step, thank you. You have no idea how much they've meant to me during this difficult time with my husband's illness. Your kindness has been a bright spot in my darkest days. Please know that you are making a real difference in people's lives." Tommy beamed when I read him the note. Mommy was right, wasn't she? Hearts really do make sad people happy. Yes, sweetheart, your mommy was very, very right. A year after Lisa's death, Tommy and I decided to do something special. We gathered all the neighbors who had been touched by the Heart Brigade and organized a memorial chalk art festival in Lisa's honor. People brought their own chalk and covered the entire street with hearts, flowers, rainbows, and messages of love and hope. It was beautiful, and one morning we found a note tucked under my door. It was from Mrs. Johnson. "To whoever has been leaving the beautiful chalk hearts on my step, thank you. You have no idea how much they've meant to me during this difficult time with my husband's illness. Your kindness has been a bright spot in my darkest days. Please know that you are making a real difference in people's lives." Tommy beamed when I read him the note. Mommy was right, wasn't she? Hearts really do make sad people happy. Yes, sweetheart, your mommy was very, very right. A year after Lisa's death, Tommy and I decided to do something special. We gathered all the neighbors who had been touched by the Heart Brigade and organized a memorial chalk art festival in Lisa's honor. People brought their own chalk and covered the entire street with hearts, flowers, rainbows, and messages of love and hope. It was beautiful and colorful and exactly the kind of thing Lisa would have loved. Mike Henderson spoke to the group about his wife's legacy of kindness and how proud he was that Tommy was carrying it on. He thanked me for being Tommy's partner and spreading joy throughout the neighborhood. But I knew the truth. I wasn't Tommy's partner, I was his student. He was teaching me what his mother had known all along, that small acts of kindness have the power to heal, to connect, and to transform entire communities. As I watched Tommy carefully draw a large pink heart in the center of the street, surrounded by all our neighbors adding their own artistic contributions, I realized something profound. Lisa Henderson had never stopped taking care of me. Even after her death, she was still brightening my days, still helping me heal, still teaching me about love and community through her son. Tommy wasn't just continuing his mother's tradition of drawing chalk hearts. He was continuing her mission of seeing people who were hurting and finding ways to help them feel less alone. The woman who had been a recluse, who had shut herself off from the world in her grief, was now at the center of a community of caring neighbors. The woman who had thought she had nothing left to give was now helping a little boy process his own grief while spreading joy throughout the neighborhood. Lisa Henderson had saved me twice. Once with her anonymous chalk hearts when I was drowning in isolation, and once through her son, who had shown me that healing happens when we reach out to others who are hurting. Today, 2 years after that first chalk heart appeared on my step, Tommy and I still draw hearts every morning. But now we're joined by other neighbors, other children, other people who have learned that small gestures can make a big difference. The Heart Brigade has become a neighborhood institution. New families are welcomed with chalk hearts on their steps. People going through difficult times find colorful encouragement on their sidewalks. Children learn that kindness is something you do, not just something you feel. And every morning when I see that first heart of the day, I think about Lisa Henderson and the incredible gift she gave me. Not just the hearts themselves, but the lesson that love finds a way to continue, even after we're gone. But the most amazing part of this story isn't what happened in our neighborhood, it's what's happening beyond it. People have heard about the Heart Brigade and started their own versions in other communities. Children in other cities are drawing chalk hearts for their neighbors. Adults are finding simple ways to brighten each other's days. Lisa's idea that hearts make sad people happy is spreading far beyond what she ever could have imagined. Tommy is 8 years old now, and he still draws hearts on my step every morning. But he's also teaching other children how to spread kindness in their own neighborhoods. Last week, he told me something that brought tears to my eyes. "Mrs. Sarah, I think Mommy would be happy that we're still making people smile with hearts." "I think she would be very happy, Tommy." "Do you think she can see us from heaven?" I looked at this remarkable little boy who had inherited his mother's gift for seeing people who needed love and finding ways to give it to them. "I think she sees us every single day, sweetheart. Every time we draw a heart, every time we make someone smile, every time we choose kindness over indifference, she sees all of it." The chalk hearts that started appearing on my step weren't just random acts of kindness. They were part of a deliberate, thoughtful campaign by a neighbor who saw someone in pain and refused to let them suffer alone. Lisa Henderson understood something that many of us forget, that the smallest gestures can have the biggest impact, that consistency matters more than grand gestures, that sometimes the best way to help someone is to love them quietly without expecting anything in return. She also understood that kindness is something that can be taught, passed down, and multiplied. By involving Tommy in her project, she ensured her legacy of caring would continue long after she was gone. But the most important lesson from this story isn't about chalk hearts or neighborhood kindness or even grief and healing. It's about paying attention to the people around us. It's about noticing when someone is struggling and finding ways to help, even if they seem like they want to be left alone. It's about understanding that everyone is fighting battles we can't see, and that sometimes the smallest acknowledgement of their humanity can make all the difference. Lisa Henderson saw a grieving widow who was isolating herself from the world, and instead of respecting that isolation, she gently, persistently, lovingly refused to let me disappear completely. But there's one more thing about this story that I haven't told you yet. Something I discovered just last month that makes me believe Lisa Henderson's influence on our lives is even more profound than I realized. Because when I was going through some old papers, I found something that changed everything I thought I knew about those chalk hearts and why Lisa had started drawing them in the first place. I found a letter that David had written to Lisa Henderson just 2 weeks before he died. A letter asking her to watch over me after he was gone because he was worried about how I would handle being alone. Lisa hadn't just decided on her own to help a grieving neighbor. She had been fulfilling a promise to my dying husband. The chalk hearts weren't just acts of kindness, they were acts of love, commissioned by the man who knew me better than anyone and who had found a way to take care of me even after he was gone. But that's a story for another day.